Welcome to your Leo horoscopes for the week ending June 1st. That's right, my friends. We are officially hitting the first day of the second half of 2024, and the first half is gone. So, this is a really good time to check in with your 2024 goals. We're halfway through. Make sure you're on the right track. If you're not on the right track, do whatever it takes to get yourself back on track. And if you can't get yourself back on track, that's okay. Just keep going anyways. At least keep moving forward and get as much done as you possibly can. We have no planets in Leo this week, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And our focus is officially moved into not just self. We were surface self last week. We are now focused on a deeper part of self. And in with our focus on our deeper part of self, there's a couple of things that come up. One, triggers abound, of course, because this deeper part of ourself is really where our emotional center lies. And our emotional center is responsible for holding on to every kind of trauma that we have dealt with in our lives. And most of us are walking around with like so much of it. Okay. Um, Even those of us that are working through our inner traumas are still walking around with a lot of it because it's just there's just so much of it to process. Sometimes it can take most of your life. I tell my clients, I always tell them this. It takes a lifetime to build up and hold on to that trauma. It's going to take the rest of your lifetime to work through it. So the younger you start, the easier it is. Most of us don't start till we're in our 30s, 40s, and 50s, and maybe even later. So, give yourself some credit. It's not something that you can just rip through and expect it all to be gone. The issue with it now, with focus being on your inner self, is that more than likely triggers come up more often. And these triggers from emotional trauma come up in various different ways and may not even look exactly the same as your previous trauma or how the trauma started. It may not even look exactly the same, which is why it's so difficult to identify it. But let's say, for instance, you're looking for a new job, you go to the interview, you think you really nailed it, everything is great, and they say, sorry, but we're looking for somebody else. Now, you could, one, go, okay, that wasn't the right job, move on to the next one, right? But most of the time, we have some sort of trauma that's attached to abandonment or attached to not being good enough or something that's very similar to what we just dealt with, which is not being chosen for the job, right? So what tends to happen is we try to convince ourselves that we're not good enough for anything, and therefore we're not going to try very hard. And it kind of leaves us in this state of fear and scared, and it just complicates things and makes it a lot more difficult. I think we've all been down this road before because let's face it, it's a part of life. We're not going to get picked for the job or the game or whatever every single time. And we can't let the fear of people not wanting us get in the way of moving forward. We have to keep going. Sometimes that even means reapplying for that job and continuing to apply for that job until you have convinced that job that you are the right person for that job. You get to think about it that way. So this actually gives you a really good opportunity to really understand your triggers and separate them. Learn to separate what your younger self created as a trigger from your adult self, which really doesn't need that trigger to be in the way of your success. If you ask any successful person, they're going to tell you that they had fear, they had rejection, they went through all of these things, they just kept going. And that's what we need to do. Okay. So that's what I have for you guys this week. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. I will see you next week. And in the meantime, don't let anyone, anything, any circumstances stop you from being the awesome Leo that you are, regardless of what those things are. I will see you next week. You guys make it a great week.